Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Monday, August 1, 2022 meeting of the Meridian Transportation Commission. It is 3:31 p.m. and I'll start with a roll call. Mr. Ballard.
Present.
Mr. Shoemaker.
Here.
Mr. Lancaster.
Present.
Myself are here. Mr. Hopkins.
Present.
Mr. Lewis.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Leclerc.
Here.
Mr. Leckey. And the ex officio list, Sean Martin is present. Lisa Otkunken. I apologize every time, okay? R.D. Huntley. Welcome. Elisa Taysom.
Here.
And Mr. Price.
Here.
Welcome. Okay, the first item is the adoption of the agenda. Miranda, I'm sounding awfully loud to me. Is it okay? Okay, well, as long as it's all right, I just sound a lot of reverb. Okay, the adoption of the agenda. Does staff have any changes? Anyone on the commission have a request for a change? Would entertain a motion for adoption.
So moved.
A motion by Mr. I thought Mr. Lewis did it, and I didn't see you talk. Mr. Hopkins and Mr.
Second.
Lewis made the second. If y'all would do it in the same order every time, it'd be easier. Okay. Next item is the approval of the minutes of the July 11 meeting. Comments, questions, points?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Ballard.
I move to adopt the proposed draft of the July 11, 2020.
Second.
We have a motion, a second by Mr. Lewis. I have a couple of points under item 4. Ms. Carson, down at line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Citizen inquiry for the blue tick micropath to be gated. It is gated.
The micropath is not gated. The vehicular access is gated.
They want the 2 little side crossings gated.
Yeah, they want the micropath gated.
Could
They
we-
want the entire thing completely gated.
Could we get that sentence structured a little differently to indicate that?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And then the next sentence following that, it says the micropath will remain open per the fire department. I hear you, but I think the preface to that was that it was a change from a previous announcement that it was the police department that wanted it to remain available. I think we need to put that in there because the previous minutes may have said police department. And then if we come along here and say fire department, somebody's going to wonder what happened. So if we just acknowledge the fact it's a change or correction, I think that would make it clearer, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I'm going to get that in.
Anyone have anything else? Mr. Ballard, does your motion include the comments that I just made?
Well, no,
Okay,
but to restate it, I would make the motion with 2 comments that you added to clarify that it will be completely gated and that the path to remain open for the police department. With those amendments, I would.
no, it was originally announced per the police department. It's now been corrected to fire department, I understand.
All right, so you just want some kind of parenthetical note that the insertion of fire corrects the verbal.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Chair. If you would like, I can read what I plan to write, and that
Okay.
might make it
please,
easier for the motion.
Please.
Say-
To remain open per the fire department, per parenthetical clause, previous communication incorrectly stated this was due to police department.
That's good.
Okay, we have an amended motion. Seconder, okay? Seconder is okay with it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's passed. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, transportation projects update by Mrs. Carson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry about that. I talk faster than I write, so. I do not have a lot of transportation projects updates. We have a lot of projects in the city that are going through design right now. Not as many in construction, which is why there's not as many updates. It's not for lack of progress, though. So there on page 5 and also on page 8, there are 2 construction updates, one for 10 Mile Road and one for the residential capital maintenance FY21. And then on page 7, U-Stick 10 Mile to Linder, that project is moving from concept to design phase. So should see some updates coming hopefully regarding the design of that project. And those are the only project updates I have, and I can stand for questions.
Questions of Mrs. Carson?
Mr. Chairman,
Lancaster.
I have a question from page 5.
Okay.
What is white paving in 10 Mile Road, Victory to Overland roundabout?
Didn't want to show my ignorance, and I figured anybody from ITD could explain it to me after the meeting.
I don't know.
We have an answer,
White,
gentleman to my right.
Concrete paving. Okay.
That would have been my guess. Any other questions for Ms. Carson? Okay, thank you, ma'am.
So, Mr. Lancaster, I'd show my ignorance even further and say, why not just call it concrete paving?
Yeah.
But do you pave with concrete? You pour concrete, so.
Yeah, I concur. I'd call it concrete paving too. So
How about concrete placement?
I don't know.
I guess is white or whatever it said was what was given to Ms. Carson by the source.
Is accurate.
Fair enough.
Just a little humor, Mr. Chairman.
I assumed, Mr. Chair, that it was concrete, but I didn't want to write concrete in case I was incorrectly interpreting it. So I put down word for word what I had.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you for asking. Sergeant Dance, welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have anything specific for the commission today, but I know Mr. Chairman came out for a few hours and did a ride along with us about a month ago,
3 weeks,
3
maybe.
weeks, yeah. And with one of our traffic units, so maybe I'll ask you
To give a report.
to give a report on that. How about that?
I'm trying to remember. I think it was more like 4 hours, which is a lot shorter than ride-alongs I've done previously other places, but that doesn't mean it's bad at all. I was curious, we have the sergeant come in and sit with us once a month, and when we, ask him questions and whatever, he kind of quietly says something, and I kind of wonder, is there any more to that or whatever? And I thought, since Meridian has a traffic team, I think is the internal term, which I'm not used to, it might be interesting to ride along with them. So he made arrangements for me to do it one afternoon. And I think I went out about noon 30, got back about 4:30. And we managed to incur a fender bender traffic accident over on Overland near Eagle. Somebody was attempting to change lanes and someone drove into the side of the car changing lanes. It got a little more interesting when it turns out that her out-of-state plate was 2 years out of date. And her husband apparently handled all the car insurance and she didn't know anything about it.
Innocent.
And she said she'd only been in Meridian for 8 days, which the two officers that were there kept rolling their eyes at. But at any rate, you may be getting a phone call, Mr. Attorney, for some help. I don't know.
That's the innocent spouse defense.
That's what the police officer told me. He said, I guarantee you, if that was the husband, it would have been the wife.
Well, the IRS has that defense.
Okay, all right. The other, let me think, the next one was on Eustic, I believe, and a motorcyclist who had a clear shot for 3/4 of a mile in front of him, didn't see the police car. And 58 and I think it was a 40, earned him an over 16-mile over ticket of $135, if I remember correctly. He was very nice about it. He did attempt to drop a name, and it wasn't mine. And I asked the officer I was riding with, I said, whose name did he drop? And he said, Robert Rodriguez. And I said, who is that? And he says, that's one of our SRO officers. I said, you mean Robert the policeman that lives 2 doors down from me? I've lived there with him for 4 years and never knew his last name. So I had a little fun in the neighborhood telling Officer Rodriguez that his name had been dropped. And he says, did it do him any good? I said, not a whit. He says, yeah, I tell my friends, you know, you can drop my name if you want, but it'll get your fine doubled. So anyway, that was kind of an interesting traffic stop. And then the third one was a young lady that pulled up next to us at a red light and was quite busy working her cell phone in her hands until she happened to look over and saw the police car and dropped it in her lap really quick. This particular officer didn't like that, and that was another $135 ticket. So watch your cell phone handling, please. Otherwise, it was a very quiet day. But thank you. Interesting and different from what I'm used to.
Well, we appreciate you for coming out. Our guys work hard. You know, we have 8 members of our traffic unit, 4 motors and 4 guys in patrol vehicles. And, you know, unfortunately, we've become more of a response traffic division. So we respond to calls for service, crashes, complaints, and the amount of time that we have available to actually go out and do enforcement seems to be getting shorter and shorter. So we're always looking for more bodies, more people to join the division. And that's just dependent upon, you know, our numbers at the police department and how many officers we can get passed through city council to hire. And it's dependent upon other divisions that pull from our patrol and our traffic team to fill other spots. So it's a big unit, but we could double the number of people in our unit and still be busy. So, but anyway, we appreciate you for coming out, Mr. Chairman, and the invitation is to anybody in the commission. If you guys ever want to come out and ride along, let me know and we'll make it happen. It's you can get a different perspective of things that maybe we deal with and traffic issues that you might not think about, you know, otherwise. So that invitation's for everybody.
Yeah, riding along when you're not driving along, you can see a lot of things you don't normally see. You know, get to look sideways every now and then and look at and realize, didn't know that business was there or whatever the case may be. Okay, thank you very much. If that's all you've got. The next item, yes, sir.
Could I ask the sergeant a question?
You may.
Preface that it may be a matter of strategy not to disclose, but 2 cars are excuse me. Seems to me it's more common that I will see 2 police cars now stop. Is there some thought about backup, just to be there if something goes sideways? Or, and I know it's somewhat dependent on the nature of the call, and if you don't want to disclose the strategy, I get it, but I'm just kind of curious. I'll see at least 2 cars on a lot of occasions now.
Yeah, and it kind of varies from case to case. Sometimes it's just an officer that might be in the area and they see another officer pulled over. So they'll just stop and make sure they're good, and then they'll be on their way. Other times it could be that there's a crime that's occurred more so than just a traffic violation. And so then we're requesting an additional resource. But generally speaking, most traffic stops where there's just a traffic violation, you'll just see one officer. Other than that, like I said, there's other reasons, getting into more criminal statutes where we start to see 2 and 3 officers on the stop. And it could be number of passengers as well in a vehicle. If there's a car full of people and they've committed, a crime or something, then we're going to obviously have more resources. But
I appreciate. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman,
Sir.
I have a question for Sergeant Dance as well. So Sergeant Dance, in the next, presumably before we see you again in another meeting, school will start. And I'm curious, in light of what you said earlier about, stretched resources and whatnot, but do you have different times of the year that you have different focuses? For instance, do you put any more emphasis in, school patrols or that sort of thing at the beginning of school, or not really?
yes, we do. We work pretty well with our school resource officers that, work with individual schools regularly, but the beginning of the school year, the first week of school, we get a lot of parents coming to school with their kids, and kids walking and riding the bus for the first time, and new bus drivers. And so we do make an emphasis to spend more time in school zones or on school bus routes to try and find violations. And there's other times throughout the school year, where we focus on school-related issues. But definitely that's one of our main priorities during the school year, as far as a traffic unit goes, is to make sure we spend time in those school zones and trying to alleviate some of those issues and concerns from parents and motorists.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Item 4 is the ACHD Capital Investment Citizens Advisory Committee update by yours truly, being the City of Meridian's appointee to that group. On July the 27th, the ACHD Commission had before them and adopted a couple of things that had been coming through the CICAC. One was impact fees, and the other had to do with particular projects. All the proposed changes were included in the CICAC's recommendation. However, there were a few modifications that were made at the commission level based on previous work sessions. The other advisory groups, the pedestrian, bicycle, commercial developers, ADA, had no comments for or against any of the items that were in this particular item on the agenda. Under the impact fees, what they did on July 27 was to raise single family from $35.29 each to drop it actually to $34.93, and then to raise general office from $4,099 to $53.50. They slightly raised light industrial from $22.45 to $24.15. Warehouse, they dropped by $6.77 to $6.69, and shopping centers went up all of $6 from $8.062 to $8.068. Please do not ask me why those particular changes were made. It's a product of discussions and back and forth. And I quite frankly don't remember the why $6 in the shopping center. The added projects list was Technology Street at Columbia to I-84 was an added project. Technology and Columbia Road intersection. The Meridian, King to Kuna Road were included in the proposed update, and Eisenman, Gowan to Lake Hazel was removed on the basis that it was not necessary prior to the next major update and will be reevaluated for that at that time. The financial records were updated to reflect completed projects and the current service area balance. Miscellaneous items were increased to 100% if eligible was denied by the commission. It was removed because given the market conditions, they didn't believe that changes leading to large fee increases were deemed appropriate at this time and be reevaluated with the next major update. The ITE Trip Generation Manual 11th edition was adopted, and exempt impact fees for affordable housing consistent with state statute was removed from the proposed update as ACHD is continuing to explore its potential within the confines of the Idaho Development Impact Fee Act. However, an affordable housing provision is unable to be included as part of this interim update. So that was not done. Fund design and construction costs for all CIP projects, including those currently listed, was removed from the proposed update. Again, citing market conditions, changes leading to large fee increases were deemed inappropriate at this time and will be reevaluated the next major update. So the commission passed all of that effective October 1. And that's what I know.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
just a question, not on the things you reported on, but something I think is adjacent on the project prioritization that you presented on last month. And my question is, this time of year, we would normally be knee deep in City of Meridian's list of capital projects and prioritization, but that was postponed because of the possible changes in the ranking scoring system that are going on right now. But do we have a new calendar or new schedule of when those projects might come back to us?
No, it's exactly where you said. It's back from the prioritization subcommittee to staff, which is working toward moving it toward either the commission or bringing it back through the prioritization committee for a final God bless or whatever before it goes to the commission.
Okay.
So no, I'm unaware of any actual. I don't have it with me. They have a like to schedule, but no set schedule.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is Mrs. Carson again with staff communications.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Staff communications is brief this month. There was an inquiry from a citizen regarding U-turns on Shendon at Linder. I believe we've discussed that intersection before. I reached out to Justin Price at ITD to find out if U-turns are allowed there, and then also received a photo of the intersection prior to this meeting and saw that there was not a restriction sign restricting U-turns. So I guess that leaves us to the question of should they be allowed at that intersection, and whether the commission has any feelings on that we should communicate back to ITD.
Do you know, you're correct. I drove it just to see. There's no permitted, there's no prohibited, there's nothing there. I'm not sure, we use that area for car washes and Fred Meyer. If you're paying attention, you can turn east going south on Linder, a half block back that puts you more straight into Fred Meyer before the street's got a blocking concrete barrier. I guess it's people that forget they wanted to turn and then decide, oops, I've got to go back to get in. But I don't know how prevalent it is. My question is it a legal width to be able to flip that from the inner left turn lane? There are two left turn lanes going south on Linder at Shendon. My question looking at it was the inside one appropriate clearance to do a U-turn? I mean, some cars could certainly do it, I know, but is it a clearance that's approved? Or are people in the right left turn lane flipping across the left one in order to go all the way back to the north?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I will make a admission here that I'm not proud of, but I wash my pickup 3 times a week at that car wash. And then I turn south on Linder and I make U-turns on that 3 times, every time so the only way to get out on that intersection and turn south on Linder out through there is to do that U-turn. And there's a sign, take a picture of it at the car wash that tells you this is how you do it. ITD regs say you can do it. And so I'm like, oh, that's good. The
Is
car
this
wash gave me permission.
A sign at the car wash?
Yeah,
Well, I use it too, but I hadn't seen the sign.
you'll see it now that I told you there's one. Anyways, and I drive a F-150 pickup and I can make that turn
From the inside
on
turn
the
lane.
inside. I make it very,
Okay,
Well, Mr. Chairman,
yes, sir.
and the sergeant will correct me. But last time I read the traffic code to get a driver's license, it read something like U-turns are permissible unless they're restricted at an intersection. Different states have different rules. So, and that's the rule of thumb I have followed. And one in particular is here at Eagle and next to the village, where the way to go west to get across the concrete medium is to make a U-turn at the light. And the challenge there, as the sergeant can attest to, is people paying attention to make the right hand on a red, that they keep a heads up when you're making that U-turn. And other than that, he's not going to get down the road unless he turns maybe 2 or 3 miles farther down the road. So I get it.
Sergeant, comments?
Yeah, Commissioner Ballard, you're correct. I mean, it's permitted there. And I think Justin reached out to me just to see how many crashes we've taken there at that intersection, specifically for those U-turns. And I couldn't find one. We've taken crashes at that intersection, but not for the U-turn issue. So I didn't have an issue with it.
Good, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
so I can't call on Lewis or Lancaster, but again, it is the data that says, okay, does that intersection present any challenges where they would put up a restricted sign? And all I'm saying is if there's some information for us to consider, bring on the data, but right now there isn't. So just more traffic challenges and you got to pay attention.
Legal U-turn apparently.
Thank you. All right. So occasionally I just bring items to get your input. And so I appreciate the input on that. It sounds like it's a non-action. We don't need to do anything with it. So the crosswalk at Black Cat and Gondola we received, we were copied on correspondence that was sent to the school district. So we didn't respond to the citizen because it wasn't an inquiry that was sent directly to us. So it's more just something for a watch list. In my opinion. It's more just for the watch list for the integrated 5-year work plan prioritization subcommittee to consider this item when they do go to do their considerations in the future of whether this should be added or if the school district's already taking this on. Just something for that group to investigate. It's not anything that we need action on today.
If I may comment on it, you're in my neighborhood over there. Let me take the speed limit point. The person says that Black Cat's already 50 miles an hour. They're going north on Black Cat from Ustick, a mile south. You will encounter in the past year, drop from 50 to 45 mile an hour sign. When you go north from Macmillan on Black Cat, there is no speed limit sign all the way to Chinden. My guess is it got taken out in that development on the northeast corner of Black Cat and Macmillan and somehow never got put back. Coming south from Chinden on Black Cat, there's a 45 mile an hour speed limit sign up near Chinden. So my guess is that's intended to be 45 miles an hour north of Macmillan. But 45 to 50 children crossing the street, I'm not sure 5 miles an hour makes a difference. That intersection they're talking about is 5 lanes at that intersection. There's a northbound right-hand turn. There's a southbound flow into traffic lane. There's a center lane, and there's a lane north and a lane south. So it's quite wide. The comments, Ms. Carson, in here about waiting for electricians or something. Mr. Martin, do you know, what's the plan for that intersection regarding pedestrians? Is it we won't stripe it as a ped crossing without having the opportunity to get a push button system on it, or what's the story if you've had a chance to look at it?
Yes, Mr. Chair, due to the speed of the street, we would not stripe a crosswalk there without an enhanced crossing. The school district is supposed to put that out to bid for construction. It is on them for construction due to a development requirement when the school went in. So last I heard is I think when the person talks about waiting on an electrician, I think they're waiting on bids is what they're doing.
Okay, so your policy or your feeling is because of the speed on Black Cat, that just striping it would invite trouble because people would think those white lines protect them from cars doing 40 to 50 miles an hour.
Mr. Chair, that is correct.
Yes, ma'am.
Also, because this correspondence does speak directly to children crossing to go to Pleasant View, I would, if I can, put RD on the spot. I know in past years, the school district didn't have students crossing 5 lanes at all, but that might not be the case anymore.
Nope, that is still the case. They are safety bused from across that road. There's already crossing to get to school.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
They are safety busing. We are busing from that region to the school. They don't cross the road.
So is there no intent to put a crossing there?
There is intent to put a crossing, just hasn't happened yet. And
Okay,
until that happens, we'll continue to bus them across that road.
okay.
All right,
Does anybody feel that this group needs to do anything else, given all that information?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I think that's an example of a question was raised. School district has looked at it. They go, a workaround is to bus the children. And so to respond to your question, I think that is a satisfactory workaround. and as times progress, they will have that implemented. So I think safety has been addressed.
And as Ms. Carson said, the letter was not addressed to us or the city. It is it's addressed to the district, and I presume they will answer it, and we don't need to. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, next item.
All right, Mr. Chair, if I can, I'm going to skip Woodbridge and come back to it and just cover the last two items on page 13. We received a report that I thought you may or may not find interesting. It's the Dangerous by Design report. There should be a link in your packet to that. And it was put out by the National Complete Street Coalition. And then the final item there is that City Council will be meeting with the ITD Board on August 23rd to discuss speed limits on Eagle Road. It's an item that this commission has discussed in the past, so I wanted to make sure you are aware. When I have more specifics on that meeting, time, location, agenda, I'll send that out as well, but I wanted to make sure you knew it was coming.
Mr. Chairman,
And then, oh, go ahead.
Mr. Butler.
were you shifting to your second topic? Because I wanted to make a comment on your first topic.
Go ahead.
I haven't read the report, but this title reminds me of a case that says even parking legally, you still may be negligent in a civil lawsuit. And the example there was a truck was parked in front of a hotel, legally parked on the side of the road. But as you approached an intersection, that truck blocked the vision of cars trying to get onto the road. So you had to nudge out there far enough to see around the edge of the truck and boom. So I'm not excusing it or advocating it. And we're seeing this in our own transportation commission as time developed, unintended consequences come along and say, whoa, maybe we need to revisit that. And even so, do we make the trucks park even farther back or cars park? And I also notice here in town and other places that sometimes it is very hard to get out of a parking lot to see around parked cars. And that's just one of the other challenges. So it's interesting to see a report like that and go unintended consequences cause some challenges.
I'm glad to hear at least one of you was interested that I put it in the packet. Because I found it interesting, so I wanted to share it with you all.
Mr. Chair.
All right, Mr. Chair, I will return back to the Woodbridge item on page 12. So we spoke about Woodbridge last month. If you remember, the complaint was that there are 4 lollipop neighborhoods.
I love the lolly. I've never heard that in my life.
It's fun.
Interrupt, has our traffic engineer or our ITD person ever heard of it? Or Mr. Martin probably has, called lollipops.
So
Perfect.
Descriptive, Mr. Chairman. Yeah.
You think it's very descriptive? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
sorry, Mr. Chair. So the neighborhoods are lollipops. I don't have another word for it. The neighborhoods are shaped like lollipops. The exterior circle, and I will share my screen here. The exterior circle of those neighborhoods is signed, or I'm sorry, the interior circle of those neighborhoods is signed no parking. And the complaint at first was, why are they signed no parking? So we met, we discussed, talked to ACHD and fire, and the street's not wide enough to have parking on both sides of the street, and reported that back to the resident. Then the next concern that the resident had was, okay, if they're not wide enough, can the outside loop be restricted rather than the inside loop? And so I brought this back to this commission just to see if you have any weigh in. So for this, in this one, you can see that the outside loop is largely driveways. The inside loop has a large section of open space with no driveways, and that seems pretty consistent amongst the 4 lollipop neighborhoods, that there's a large section of open space on the interior loop, whereas the exterior of the loop has significant driveway crossings that would restrict the amount of parking and mailboxes. So I guess the question for commission is, do we assist the citizen in taking any action to have no parking moved from the interior to the exterior? Is there a need for that? Is that something that we direct the citizen straight to ACHD and we have no buy-in? So if the commission has no buy-in, I will direct the citizens straight to ACHD. And if the commission has buy-in, then I'll share that as well.
If I may, somewhere in here, I think it said that it was 24 feet of asphalt. That is incorrect. I took a tape out there. It's 25 feet. Plus 4 feet for 2 feet on each side of curb and gutter, Mr. Lewis, makes my pacing off by a foot. It's 29 feet all the way across. That's neither here nor there. Mr. Martin, any thoughts, comments? I'm tickled that you put up the aerial, because just driving it, you see that there's some no house areas, but you're not sure exactly how many they are and what they are. I will assure you that on either Saturday or Sunday, 2/3 of all the cars parked in these 4 lollipops were next to no parking signs. That's where they park. So Sergeant, stay tuned. We may have work for you or not. Mr. Martin.
Yes, Mr. Chair, in my office, John Wasson is our neighborhood traffic engineer, and he works closely with Meridian Police on these matters to determine when and where we should restrict parking. As you mentioned, a 29-foot street section, according to our policy, what we would do is restrict it on one side. And we would typically allow it on the other. I mean, if either the Transportation Commission has an opinion or the police department has a decision on which side they would like it restricted, then we would work with them to see and make those improvements. I think, given the aerials here, I think the request probably has some merit. If we're going to restrict it on one side, that does seem to make sense to restrict it on the interior side and allow it on the outside, but, or I'm sorry, yes.
So as far as you can say right now, the gentleman, I presume it's a gentleman's, it does say a gentleman, the gentleman's request to flip it from inside no parking to outside no parking, you see no reason why that couldn't be done.
So what we would typically do is we would reach out to the police department and say, hey, we have this request to do this. Do you have a concern with it? If they didn't have a concern, then we would probably move forth with it.
Just out of curiosity, does this gentleman live on the inside?
I believe he does, but I don't know exactly. I believe he either lives on Torino or Truss, but I'm not sure if he's on the inside or outside. I just know he said he wanted better access to the open space.
Okay. Yeah, just out of curiosity, I don't know if flipping it would mean somebody who lives on the other side would complain. But yeah, I don't necessarily have an opinion one way or the other at this point.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Ballard.
at the risk of sounding like Mr. Lancaster, I would say, what is the data that we could consider? Because in looking at this, I read through it and I go, okay, I get it. But there seems to me a limited number of physical solutions to this question. And that's the layout of the subdivision, the need to move vehicles, private and the emergency vehicles and some commercial vehicles in and out of there. And what is the data? What is the physical data suggests that a solution may be? and there's 12 of us, or if I get my numbers are a little aggressive, but we're going to have 6 or 7 different opinions up here. So I'm saying, is there data that we can consider? And back to your question, is there something for us to consider or to rely upon? We got 2 levels of expertise here, and we rely upon their judgment.
Yes.
Other commissioners, comments, thoughts?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I recommend we have no opinion on this.
Other thoughts?
Mr. Chair?
Or is that just not to express an opinion because?
There you go.
Mr. Chair?
Leclerc.
I live in this neighborhood and it's pretty crowded with cars. And so
Tom, pull your mic down if you don't mind. Pull your, yeah,
my mic,
just so we can hear you.
thought it was on. So anyway, I live at 1923 East Pratt, which is in this, what's on the screen, the corner of Pratt and Tiburon. So anyway, there's where these stretches of common area are is now no parking. If you move the parking to the outside loop, there's hardly any common areas. And so it would restrict the homeowners to keeping their cars in their driveways or garages. And so that's just a factor. I don't really have an opinion about it. It's going to be crowded because whether you have no parking signs or not, and we could start citing people, but I think there's always going to be cars on both sides of the street, and you're going to have a single lane kind of in the middle. And they're low volume streets. I mean, this is really going back into the, corners of our world here in the city, because this is just such a low volume amount of traffic that's going through here. It's all residential and whatever commercial traffic is serving those homes. So I don't think it really matters to me either if we do one or the other, but I thought I'd at least express some comments since my neighbors might said if they knew I was here and didn't say anything. Thanks.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Leclerc, a question. The large common area on Pratt, up at the north end of it, do children play in that
Where?
on the grass?
Oh, this area. Oh,
Yeah.
no, I'm on the other one, but the other loop, but that part of Pratt.
Or any of those common areas like that? Do you see children playing there?
Oh, yes, definitely.
So to have cars parked there, you can, speaking of unintended consequences, you could potentially have kids leaving the green area, going between 2 parked cars and popping out in traffic.
Well, yeah, but that's true everywhere because
Okay.
kids will play in these driveways, and there's some of these homes have hoops in the driveways. And so there's balls rolling around. I mean, it's a lot of children in these neighborhoods. And some of the folks have the slow child at play signs out when their kids are out, but you just have to be careful all the time, no matter what you're driving around.
Mr. Chair? Hi, yes. I kind of echo a little bit on one hand.
You're muted.
I'm not muted.
Still can't hear you.
Mr. Chair, can you hear me? This is Caleb.
He raised his hand. No, he just.
So it's all of
Still
us.
cannot hear you,
Okay.
sir.
Yeah, Jared, I can hear you. It doesn't sound like they can
Okay.
hear us in chambers.
Thank you. Okay, that makes sense.
You,
Sure, well,
Ms. Carson, is it on our end or his end?
I do not know that, sir.
We heard you when we called roll.
It's like Mr. Hood is on as well, so maybe he'll talk and we'll see if we can hear.
Yeah,
him.
if you guys can't hear me, you can't hear us.
It must be on our end because Mr. Hood is also on and
I think they can hear each other
Yep.
having. We might
Yes,
be
we
worried
can.
about that, but
put up 1 finger for yes and 2 fingers for no.
He had a poster board, he could write his question and hold it up.
So maybe we just ask him to nod if he has an opinion and
Um,
then we can collect it, or if he
I-
doesn't want to state an opinion.
Yes,
If you,
uh,
can he email you real quick?
yes.
Are you on your
I
computer?
don't have access to my email from this room.
Well,
It's
he
fine,
could
it's
email
fine.
Caleb, but he can't talk to us either unless. he
Jared,
runs
if you
down the
want to
hall.
send it to me, I can run it in there.
It's Jared emailing Caleb who texts.
It's not that urgent.
Okay,
I can just
okay.
email Miranda after the fact. It's all good.
It's really helpful. And
All good.
we can't chat in a webinar.
Mr. Smith, I wish we could hear your opinion, but I don't know if we can. So anyone else at the dais that has an opinion
Mr.
or
Chairman,
another comment? Mr. Ballard?
so there was an admission made earlier, but I live in a little different section. And one of the neighbors said, Dave, I noticed when you leave, you creep out of the neighborhood maybe in first gear. And I go, yes, because I'm watching for walkers, I'm watching for kids and shadows and whatnot. And that's just me. And I think Mr. Leclerc was talking about, you just got to watch for people in it. And these are narrow streets in the subdivision, and there's just some challenges that have to be met.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chair, I got a text that Jared will email me, and so I will have that communication. If it's pertinent, I'll put it in next month's staff communication.
So Sergeant Dance, we are around to the fact that we have these official placed no parking signs that are being ignored. That's a question.
So yes, we can enforce that.
It's not our job to tell you to. I'm just asking.
Right. I guess we have to look at what maybe the bigger picture and what the end goal is. We can enforce it, but do these vehicles have an actual place to go where it's safer? I mean, and maybe that's something that we learn by going over there and enforcing it and talking to people and figuring out what options might be available.
Fair enough. If you learn something worth telling, we would be glad to have you bring it back to us. I mean, there appear to be plenty of places to park, not plenty, but enough. If you move them off the wrong side of the street to the correct side of the street, they can still park. But there are more cars parked on the no parking side than on the okay to park side. I can tell you that, at least on the weekends. It's an interesting place. I'm glad I know what a lollipop is now. Okay. Anything else, Ms. Carson?
Yes, not on staff communications, but I do need to talk about the future meeting topic if I can have
Would you please?
a minute to talk about. So next month, we have our ACHD traffic operations tour for the commissioners. Our ex officios will have that the month off. We have Caleb has checked out a park van to drive anybody that would like to ride with us to the ACHD Operations Center, or you can drive separately if you want to meet us there. The plan right now is to meet here at 3 p.m. to do roll call, approve the minutes from this meeting, and then adjourn and load up to go to the Traffic Operations Center. If everybody who wants to attend that tour attends here in person for roll call, then we won't need to do a Zoom meeting. We can just skip the Zoom part for September. I've already had that cleared with the clerk's office. And then I will send something out, getting an idea of who wants to ride in the van, unless you know now that you want to ride in the van. Then I can go ahead and take a roll. You want to raise your hand if you want to ride in the van?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. I think we talked about snacks before, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
You jumped the gun.
Let the lady finish with the logistics of getting us there, and then it's on my list, snacks.
Because I couldn't.
I
affect my
have
decision
small
to ride in
children.
the
I've
van.
learned you don't start with talking about food or people get distracted. So we will be here with the van and I'll send out just a reminder. So we'll meet here at 3 p.m. and then we are going to order some box lunch type meals. So box sandwich, chips. I will send out a memo this coming week. I'm sorry, menu, not a memo, a menu this coming week to get some orders for anybody that wants to enjoy those. The question is, do we want to eat those here or pack a cooler and eat them on the way? Our schedule is to get there at 3:30 for that tour. I'm not sure if Sean's our tour guide or if that's somebody else. He's not our tour guide. He is not Vanna White this time.
Nothing to do.
But our schedule is to get there at 3:30 for that tour. So we'll need to get here, get roll call, get minutes taken, and get in the van pretty quickly. So one idea was to either eat in the van on the way, eat in the van on the way back. If you're at the tour and you're hungry, go to the van and eat your food. Or we could pull over somewhere on the way back and eat at a park or
Parks van, right? We could park the Parks van in the park.
maybe we go there and then come back, and anybody who wants to eat, we have a great set of concrete steps out here. We can eat or, yeah. So
Any thoughts? Liddy's kind of
where
asking a
when you want to
question.
eat.
Eat it on the fly.
In the van.
Coming or going?
Eat it on the fly, and if you're not hungry, you take it home with you.
I got two on the goings, eat on the fly. On the way.
All right.
Got enough to
Don't
make
need
it
a
happen.
motion for that. It's not super official,
There you go.
but I will take that as your.
And
But-
the bus has to be clean when we leave, so keep that in mind.
Mr. Smith, would you hold up your hand if you're going to be able to attend in person next month, sorry.
No.
You cannot? Okay,
Do you plan to attend the tour? Okay,
okay, thank you.
that is fine.
So that's gotta be a new first. Anything else, Ms. Carson, on that?
That is it. Does everybody else plan to attend in person and do the tour? Because then I can plan to Zoom. Okay.
Yep,
Mr. Chairman. and
Yes, sir.
Miranda, I'm unavailable to attend next month.
we'll miss you.
Thank you.
Potato harvest?
Not yet. That may be a reason why I'm not here in October either.
Okay,
It's a busy
Um,
couple months.
I have a question regarding a future meeting topic.
Okay.
To the commissioners, a couple of months ago, the Valley Regional Transit Advisory Council had a presentation by Compass and by Elaine Clegg, Boise City Council president, I believe she still is, on rail in the Treasure Valley. They had two different points to make about it. Compass has done citizen surveys regarding it. We got a report on that. Ms. Clegg has done a lot of work and continues to do a lot of work regarding possibly trying to get Amtrak to ramble through here. My question is, would the commission like for me to see if I can get them to do that presentation possibly in October if they're both available? It probably will take 25 minutes or so, I think. It's fairly detailed.
Mr. Chair, they did provide the high capacity transit update, I believe, a couple months ago. Is that the same update that you were given, or was that a different presentation?
This was different.
Okay.
This was a,
Just wanted to clarify.
this was
for name.
This was a requested presentation from one of the advisory council members that said, we'd like to hear something about rail. And we got those two ladies to make the presentation. Only place I've seen it. And they did it kind of ad hoc. I mean, they knew about it and set it up ahead of time, but they were working independently. They both have a lot of data. So my question is, would the commission like to hear that or not?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Ballard?
I would say yes, because the focus of this commission is transportation. I'm not being facetious, but that is moving people and freight by different modes, and rail is one of them. And to me, the question should have been answered 20 years ago, and let's work to get it done. And that allows a segue on efforts at the county highway district and municipal, and just not to our locale, but throughout the state, addressing transportation issues. So there can be more on our plate, things coming up, and this rail is one of them. How does it affect our community? And I think we ought to be part of that conversation.
Miss-
Other thoughts? Okay, I need some head nodding as to whether to try to make it happen or not.
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, so did you say Amtrak? Are we talking about Amtrak's?
Well, they
making
talk
stop
about
here
Amtrak as well as
or light rail?
intercommunity
Well, they do
from
both.
Caldwell to downtown Boise. They got some, between the two of them, they've got a good bit of perspective on what could, can't, problems, the good, the bad.
Right, yeah.
And then they also, even if I remember correctly, they bump into some numbers that make you wonder how anybody could ever afford to do it. So it's part of transportation is why I bring it up.
How can we afford not?
Nobody's telling me no, so I'm going to ask the ladies if they would be willing to do that once again. Okay. That's all the chair has for today. Does anyone else have anything else?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
so in light of our conversation at the last commission meeting in July, my question for you is, do we need to make or give specific recommendations on these staff communications? Particularly Linder at Chinden U-turns, and then no parking signs in Woodbridge.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the question part of it.
So do we need to make specific recommendations or decisions regarding these items in light of last month's conversation?
From my opinion, these are information items, which I would say we have the ability and right to take action on them or direct staff to go get more information or ask staff to go get more information, or to jump all the way to telling somebody we think they ought to do something. That's my personal opinion. What do the rest of you think?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Ballard?
so I understand what Mr. Lancaster is asking. And to the Linder project, maybe it wasn't as formal, but Mr. Lewis's comment, I think, which was accepted, and maybe we need to put that in a formal resolution or comment, that given the data that we have or the information about the U-turn at Chinden, that at this time, it's lawful and it doesn't present an exception for safety. So the position that Mr. Lewis suggested is we express no opinion about
further action being taken. It appears that it's been reviewed and the information to us is the matter does not need further attention. As far as here at Woodbridge, if that's the next item, I think your point is taken. Do we ask for a resolution or an expression to say, can we get more information, or can you report back? They being is ACHD, the police, they're going to have further communication, or is somebody else going to go out there and survey it and come back? So I think that one is, do we reserve further comment pending receipt of additional information? And I think we could formalize that in a resolution, or maybe there's a different, I don't think we need an up or down vote or a recommendation, or if it's just simply, let's hold it. But I appreciate your comment to recognize some official note on those two items.
A question, would a statement in the minutes satisfy your desire? I mean, I'm not, Ms. Carson, on the lender U-turns, do you have a person that would expect us to respond to them regarding that one? Do you have what was your,
Not that would
what was your
respect this-
contact? I mean,
Not that would expect this group to respond. I don't know, and I would have to ask Tishra or Emily. I don't know that you would make a motion that you have no opinion.
No, that's not what I'm
You would
asking.
have to
I'm asking,
think.
would
Okay.
the person that brought up the question? the
They did
citizen-
not directly ask the Transportation Commission to review it, or I would have made it a separate agenda item. and
How did you get the question?
It was emailed to us, and so I followed up on it and I put it in so that you would know that I had received it and followed up on it. with
No,
the-
that's all well and good. What I'm asking is, do you plan to respond to the email from the citizen regarding that item?
Yes, I
And-
will, or
And what do you plan to tell them based upon today's meeting?
I would tell them that the Transportation Commission reviewed it and based on, and I'll also wait until I get the response from ITD, because then I'll have the official ITD response as well, that this is an ITD roadway. The city of Meridian is not, doesn't have jurisdiction over roadways. Transportation Commission reviewed it and determined that they didn't want to take any action to recommend anything to ITD, and ITD said X, Y, and Z when I received that response.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, no. Is that satisfactory on that one? For your point?
Not entirely, Mr. Chairman. I
What
think
more,
we need to make
what
a-
more would you like, Mr.
I
Lanter?
think we need, so based on last month's discussion, where this commission decided not to take an action and then saw an action taken. Right? So I think we need to be deliberate and specific. I think we need to recommend no action be taken on specifically Linder at Chinden U-turns.
Recommend to who?
Recommend to that this commission recommend.
I guess to whom?
To city staff, that the opinion of this body is to take no action or
What-
make no
Yes.
change.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
One moment, but that appears to be what she's doing, is that she is passing on our no action.
I could see there being three things that come out of any item on this agenda, and maybe this is just the way I view it, but since I'm the staff liaison who has to liaise your findings back, I see either the Transportation Commission reviewed and took no action. Maybe you had an opinion. Sometimes I say some commissioners thought this and some thought this, but they took no action. Or I would say the Transportation Commission reviewed and recommended that no changes be made at the intersection. Or I would say the Transportation Commission reviewed and recommended that changes be made at the intersection, and they are X, Y, and Z.
I think you're confusing, Mr. Lancaster, a higher authority taking action above our heads with our not having, I don't think it would change anything if we'd said any more. I'm very much, I've said this before from here, I'm very much in making sure we communicate back to the people that raise questions to us, whether it's the mayor of the council, a citizen, or anybody. I'm big into telling them what we did, good, bad, or indifferent. But, and if it's in the minutes, it reflects what we did. I can't see the mayor or the council taking this up unless they hear about it and decide to take it up. And if they do, that's their rank. I mean, we can't tell the mayor, you can't get into that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I see about 4 dynamics going on here. And one is, we just asked Miranda to interpret what we did. So I'm reeling back, and I agree with Mr. Lancaster that we express a comment. And I also agree with you that there's a direct communication. If this email was put out and addressed, that we respond. Besides being courteous, that's also professional and part of our job. So what I'm getting at is that what I saw on that discussion was it was reviewed, and from the information presented, it appeared no action to be taken. Now, that's not a recommendation to the city or to the council or anybody above us in rank. And then we would ask not to put it on Miranda's shoulder to interpret it, but to say, Miranda, would you please write this if we can ask her, and that's within her job description. And then she knows this really simple sentence, and that accomplishes your reply. Mr. Lancaster's concerned that we weighed in at some level, and we get on to the next topic.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, so again, I see a need for us to be more specific in our communications. I think just leaving it hanging as we see no action or no action to be taken. I think we need to be more deliberate than that going forward.
I'm a little puzzled. The commission statement on the lender U-turn item was no action. I don't know how else to handle it other than not take any action. I mean, and if we're going to put it in the minutes, that that's what we did, and we're going to report to the person that brought the question to us, I don't know what more you would like for us to do. I understand your point about last month. I get it. But I'm not sure this rises to that situation.
So, Mr. Chairman, that's exactly my point. We didn't know last month's issue would rise to that level either. And so not knowing what those are going to be, I think we need to be more deliberate on lots of topics.
I hate to belabor the point, but how much more deliberate do you want to be on the lender U-turn?
So this is just an example. If we're going to be more deliberate, Mr. Chairman, we need to start now. And so on Linder Chinden U-turn, for instance, I recommend that this commission state that we recommend no changes based on the information presented.
Mr. Chair, if
I suspect that's how the minutes are going to read, but I'll let Ms. Carson tell me whether they will or not.
Mr. Chair, they wouldn't read that way because it wasn't a recommendation that had a motion and a second and passed. It would just say TC discussed, had no concerns with U-turns at the intersection. But if somebody said, what were their findings? What was the recommendation of the Transportation Commission? I could say this is what the general opinion was, but they didn't really have any formal action. Now, I'm going to look to our staff attorney for a second, because I believe at any point during an action item, a commissioner can make a motion if by Robert's rules of order. I don't
And
think
state,
that a
and
commissioner,
state code.
I don't think that a commissioner has to have permission to make a motion, so not trying to dramatize the situation. But I don't see any harm if a commissioner has a strong stance on something and wants to make a motion that we recommend one way or the other. And then everybody votes if they want to agree or disagree, it passes or it doesn't pass, and we move on from the topic rather than discussing whether we need to discuss it and whether we need to formalize the discussion of what we discussed. Is that correct, Ms. Murray? Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Beller.
this tempest in a teacup is very easy to settle. And I say that with due respect. It is a valid point, and if need be, I would make the motion. One, just like anybody that sends me an email, I say, dear so-and-so, I appreciate your email, bring it to my attention, and I respond substantively. And that's part of my motion, is that there's a very quick email back to this individual that thank for bringing it to our attention. We reviewed it based upon the information to date. We see no action to be taken at this time. And then if that accomplishes, I think, the 3 or 4 points that we've discussed here.
Is that a motion?
Yes, that is a motion.
I'm not sure I can understand.
I have a question. It's whether or not a motion's appropriate once we've left the topic and we're down here at the end. Is a motion appropriate at this time on that previous item? Okay, a motion's appropriate. Do we have a second?
I'm sorry, I don't understand what the motion was.
All right, I'll restate it because there was a lot of commentary. I apologize, Miranda, talking over.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard.
So the motion is, let's see if I can put it succinctly. All right. So the motion is to ask Ms. Carson to respond to the writer of the email to appreciate the item being brought to our attention. We reviewed it, and based upon the information at hand, does not appear that further action is necessary or need to be taken at this time. That's the motion.
Do we have a second?
And this is just for the Linder item, Mr. Chair.
Oh, yeah, I
You-
understand it to be
Commissioner,
just the
you-
lender item.
The U-turn item, yes.
Your turn.
Second.
We have a second for Mr. Hopkins. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lancaster.
Mr. Ballard. So my concern is with the motion is that it still doesn't specifically address anything. So taking no action, we can do that by taking no action. So I think we need to be more deliberate in taking action and specifically state that it is our decision that action shouldn't be taken at this intersection based on the information presented. If I were making the motion, that's what I would say.
Any other discussion?
Well, I'll respond because I'm considering the language and not, I'm not being facetious. I'm straining it through my legalese. And that is, are we expressing an opinion that has consequences? Or someone picks out the minutes and goes, oh, maybe there's a liability issue there. So if I made it a little vanilla, that may have been intentional. But, you know, based upon what we, well, I guess what the question is, the real question is it, should that intersection be restricted? I guess you could go on to say, and based upon the information, we haven't seen the data to suggest an exception should be made to the current code, which regulates that intersection.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Lewis.
just to comment here, I think we need to be clear one of two things. We are either saying that the commission decided to take no action, or the commission decided to recommend no changes be made to the current situation. Is that correct?
I think that's a good way to put it.
Louis, if I withdraw my motion and you restate it, I think you've got the finger on the pulse.
Were you withdrawing your motion?
Yes, because I'm going to let Mr. Lewis state it. I like what he said.
Mr. Hopkins, motion's been withdrawn. Where you sit? You agree? Okay.
Mr. Chairman. I
Mr.
move-
Lancaster, we do not have a motion on the floor.
Correct. Mr. Chairman, I move that the commission recommend taking, I'm sorry, I move that the commission recommend making no changes to the intersection at Linder and Chinden based on the information presented at today's meeting.
You hang in there somewhere regarding the U-turn question or something like that.
Okay, so Linder at Chinden U-turns as presented in the packet and presented during today's meeting.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second was Mr. Lewis. Discussion.
And coattail to that would be an email responding to the offer of the,
I believe that's a foregone conclusion.
all right. That's acceptable.
Other discussion. Okay, you have the motion. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ms. Carson, are we good? Mr. Lancaster, are we good on that one?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Okay, would you like to move over to the other one?
So, Mr. Chairman, I don't have a motion or recommendation for Woodbridge, but I do recommend that we take some action, even if that action is, we discuss it at a future meeting.
I'm not disagreeing with you, but I think I remember asking the sergeant or when asking the sergeant about the fact that you got this problem going on out there, he stated that he and his people would work the area, see what's going on, possibly talk to people. My words, possibly hang some warning, no parking tickets, just to get people's attention, and presume report back to us when he knows something. Now, that's how I think we left it when we left the topic. Would you like to do something further?
No, thank you for that reminder, Mr. Chairman. That's fine with me as long as we don't forget. We or sorry.
Trust me, between Ms. Carson and myself or anybody else sitting up here, we will not forget. Because I know Mr. Lewis just can't wait to get back to Woodbridge.
Chairman,
Mr. Leclerc.
what I remember from the citizen comment was that he wanted to move the no parking signs from one side of the street to the other. I
Correct.
think we agree that we do not want to do that. And so I have a draft motion here saying we do not support that idea. Should we take that? If we would like to take that action, I'm ready.
Not yet.
Not yet.
No.
I'm ready.
It has not been made yet.
If we don't feel we need it, then we'll just move on.
Mr. Lancaster.
Mr. Chairman, I would, if that's a motion, I will second it, Commissioner Leclerc.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I move the Meridian Transportation Committee does not support changing the existing placement of no parking signs in the Woodbridge subdivision in response to the comment in our packet.
Second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion.
The only discussion is, should we wait for Sergeant Dance or any other information to come, or, I mean, I can vote either way, but I'm just going, are we asking to see if there's any further information that we'd want to consider?
Any other discussion? On the motion? We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Mr. Smith, I see your hand, but I'm not sure what to do about it. Hey, oh, thank you. Mr. Hopkins has to remind me that you're out there, Mr. Smith. I'm sorry, I'm too busy looking left and right up here. That was a no vote by Mr. Smith.
Do I need to take, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, do I need to take a roll if there's one opposition or just note the one opposition and all others are ayes? Thank you.
Other comments, items for the good of the group? Chair would entertain a motion for adjournment.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's going to happen anyway because the Eagle Road is such a big. But I think a future meeting topic for us ought to be, what are all the options on Eagle Road for speed changes? And there's discussion lately of no blind left turns. And there's all sorts of stuff going on with that issue. I just think that's a good future topic.
Ms. Carson, why don't we put a future topic of what's going on now at Eagle Road?
By October, things will.
Eagle Road
There'll
left
be a lot
turns
going on.
and speeds.
Well, apparently not just speed, but other such things. Once some of the dust settles, we'll figure out what's going on.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
We have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Smith, you in favor? He's in favor. Good. Okay. Thank you. Have you heard me say?
Did I get what you
And I, no, and I wouldn't share. I got accused once of trying to get it another minute because I had said 5:01 and it's sitting right there. You can see that. Ms. Murray, are we